Welcome, welcome, welcome. Oh my gosh, what a beautiful day it is. I'm so excited to have you tune in for today's Women of Worth author interview. And this author interview is actually the second in a series, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And I am just thrilled about today's lineup of women that we have joining us today. I'll take a few moments to make sure to introduce you to all of them as well. Before we get started, I want to just introduce myself to you. I am your host for today. I am Kristen Clark. I am an award-winning author, editor, and publisher, and the publisher of the book series that we're talking about today. So again, just welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. I want to go ahead and take a few minutes to introduce you to our guests. I'm super excited to have Marshawn Rogers join us live from Santa Clarita, California, where social work serves as her life calling. She lives with her loving husband Corey and her son Noah, who has autism. She relies on her Christian faith to shape who she is and has a heart to help others realize their incredible worth and ability as God's children to overcome absolutely anything. I just love that, Marshawn. Welcome. So glad to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kristen. It is such a blessing to be here, and I am just so excited about today and this process and being able to speak with you and also meet Bonnie.
Excellent. Excellent. And so let me introduce everyone to Bonnie. Bonnie lives in South Carolina, dialing in from there to us live with her immediate family, 9 in total, and 3 pets. Bonnie's passions include writing, reading, playing computer games, watching old movies, genealogy, Native American and European roots. I love that. And now anime. She blames her kids for that. We'll have to hear more about that. She enjoys helping others by volunteering, teaching, and now coaching and mentoring others in coping and living again, regardless of what life throws your way. Oh, goodness sakes. Welcome, Bonnie.
Hello. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone, and I'm so excited and a little nervous too, but I think that's mainly because I'm excited.
Excellent, excellent. And Bonnie, I just have to say, I love this photographic representation of you, the blue rose. Can you talk a little bit about what that symbolizes for you?
Yes, it has to do a lot with fibromyalgia, which I was diagnosed with back in 2008. And as I was surfing the net trying to find out more about this condition, a lot of people were using it as the representation for fibromyalgia. And I just was like, it's beauty, it's, a sign from God, roses and everything, and then the blue is just sometimes how we feel because of our condition. And I was like, that's beautiful. And so I just chose to use that to represent me because I have fibro and I'm still beautiful and the rose is still beautiful even though it's blue.
I love that. I just love that. Thanks for sharing that. Now, you may already know this, but the book that we're featuring today, Becoming Women of Worth, Stories of Trauma and Triumph, was actually inspired by my first book, Becoming a Woman of Worth, Creating a More Confident You. This book was the catalyst, if you will, for my Women of Worth series. And I'm especially delighted to just tell everyone that this book won the gold medal in the category of Christian Biblical Counseling in the 2014 International Reader's Favorite Book Award Contest. Thank you, God. Praise sending you right now, sending that up. I'm just very honored to have that recognition and to be validated in that way. And today's book is just really fantastic as well. This is a compilation book where we're getting an opportunity to hear real-life stories from women who have battled and overcome a trauma in their their life and have risen triumphantly with God's help. Super excited. This is the second book in the series, Becoming Women of Worth series. The third book in this series is actually scheduled for publication this Thanksgiving weekend coming up. I'm super excited. It will be a little more lighthearted in terms of the content. It's Becoming Women of Worth, stories of sugar and spice and recipes for the holidays. So super excited about that. Stay tuned for more information. But let's go ahead and get started with our interview. I'm super excited again to have Marshawn Abani joining us. Bonnie, I'm going to start with you. Tell me about what inspired you to participate in this compilation book in the first place. How did you hear about it, and why did you think this was something you wanted to respond to?
I'm not exactly sure what list I had joined or what giveaway, but I had joined something in which you were part of, and I got an invitation email saying, I have 20 spaces open for women who are willing to step forward and share their life with us. And I was like, no, that's not me. And I just put it off to the side and came back and I said, well, maybe it is me. And then I read it again and I thought about it, and I took some time and I prayed about it for a while, and then I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do it, because I know that I'm not the only person out there that ever went to a doctor's office and got some horrible news and felt like their world shattered, and I could probably help somebody else pick up their feet and keep moving forward instead of just staying planted in misery and wallowing in sorrow and self-pity. And so I decided I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And as we came to find out, it took me a little bit longer to get my story into you, because I ended up encountering some issues that I didn't know were going to be associated with it. And of course, with my condition of fibromyalgia, I also sometimes get to have really bad days with the weather. So that has a lot to play with me getting things done and participating. So I'm really glad that here in South Carolina we're having good weather for the last 2 days, because I was so afraid I was going to have to go, oh, Kristen, I can't make it because I feel miserable. And I was like, oh, please don't rain. Please, God, let it be a good weekend. And it was.
Oh, awesome. I love that. Thank you, God. Marshawn, same question. What inspired you to participate in this compilation book? When you first heard about the call for submissions, what was it that prompted you to respond?
Well, actually, a friend actually posted the announcement for submissions about the compilation book on Facebook. I know I had gone to a WOW conference here in Southern California last fall, actually a year to the month that we're in now, and it was a women's retreat. And I think as a result of that, I made friends with someone there who was also connected. So I've always had the desire to be a writer. This was a perfect opportunity for me to tell my story and my testimony. And also something else that inspired me to participate or gave me the courage were the writing tips and encouragement that you provided along the way. That was such a blessing, and it was just the push and the support that I needed.
I love that. Now tell me a little bit about what the experience was like when you were writing this story for this book. What was that like for you? What thoughts went through your mind? How was that? Did you enjoy it? Did you struggle with it? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, as I wrote the story, it took me a minute. It took me a while because I became extremely emotional. It was the most cathartic experience I believe I've ever had. I could remember so clearly how dark my depression was, and I was grateful for the Lord's goodness and mercy as I wrote, and I couldn't believe I was actually here to tell the story and here to write the story. I was able to relive the breakthrough that I had 5 years ago. The act of choosing the adjectives to describe my experience helped me to realize just how profound both the trials and the triumph really were.
Hmm. I love that. Now, Bonnie, you shared a little bit about the challenges in writing that story from a physical standpoint. Talk to me a little bit about some other experiences you had writing this, emotionally or spiritually. What were some things about your journey that you'd like to share with us?
Well, when you sent the questions out for us to start digging back into our psyche to remember everything that we'd done several months ago, I wrote it down because with my fibromyalgia, I have a thing called fibro fog where I'll be talking and all of a sudden I'll forget what I was saying and I'm like, okay, where were we? And my family's gotten used to it and we even can joke about it sometimes. So I have a little list here. And the first thing I discovered about it is that it was tougher than I thought it was going to be. I've written my whole life little short stories. I've worked on novellas, poetry, but I hadn't done anything extremely personal before. And I thought it was going to be easy because, I could write, sit down, type out, no problem. And originally the story was going to be about my dad and my dad's passing because he passed away just 10 days before my birthday in 2008. And all of a sudden it wasn't about that. It was about the fibromyalgia instead. And so that caught me off guard, and I was like all prepared to deal with all the issues with my dad passing away and coming to terms with that because I was a daddy's girl. And then here I am going, I went to the doctor and the doctor said, you're going to be disabled for the rest of your life and you're going to be on pain medicine. You'll never work again. And I was like, excuse me? And my whole world just shattered. And I allowed myself to sink into a depression, and it was horrible. And I had to go back and rethink what I had done and how I just turned away, and I just couldn't hear God's voice to me anymore. I just allowed the misery of the condition to just overcome my whole being, and it took a while before I could hear his voice telling me, you got to get over it. You're not going to go anywhere if you don't get up and do something, and that's one of the reasons I chose to write it. And going through it, he helped me heal other wounds, like getting over the depression, getting over the feeling of being useless, because God doesn't make anything useless, and we all know that in our hearts, but when we encounter problems, sometimes our heads get in our way.
I love that. Sometimes our heads get in our way. It's so true. Now, when you finally had a chance to see the book and it was finished, and you got to see your story in black and white, printed, for the world to read, what was that experience like? Marshawn, tell me a little bit about how that made you feel.
Wow, I felt that I had really not just writing the story, but what God actually brought me through, having brain surgery and finding out that I had a brain tumor and having to tell my family, and all the ways that I know that Jesus carried me through all that. And so seeing that written there in black and white, it was first to have it in a publication. It was so surreal, and it was hard for me to just wrap my head around it. I was so proud of myself, A, and B, I was so incredibly grateful, and it made me appreciate my family more, my friends, my church, people who were there for me in that time. But the biggest thing, Kristen, is that how that yoke of slavery was broken as far as the depression, and how God is there on the other side to just bring us through that. Just praise him. He's going to open the door, but while he's working on that, we're just going to praise him in the hallway. And that's what I was working on trying to do, and I was just holding on to hope. And his word does not return void, and I was just so grateful. So seeing that written right there, it just meant so much for me. And even to this day, I still, when I'm having a hard time, I look back to that whole experience of writing that story, and I just know it's just something, what I'm dealing with now is just something that I'm going to continue, and then once again, I'm going to pull through it.
Gosh, I just love that. I love getting to hear that joy and that triumph, right? Which is, a key word in the title, that triumph, the victory that we get to experience. I love that. Bonnie, same for you. Share with us what it was like for you when you got to see the book and your story in print, publication. What feelings came up for you?
I can agree with Marshawn so absolutely 100,000% that it was surreal. I mean, I looked at it and I was like, oh, this is the book, great. And I didn't even read my story first. I wasn't even thinking about my story. I was like, this is the book, and I opened it up and I read it from cover to cover. And then I was like, where was my story? And I totally missed it because I was engrossed with everybody else's stories of what they'd gone through and, how they overcame it. And I was like, was my story in there? And I had to go back through the book because I read my story, but I just totally overlooked it because I'd lived it and I was so touched by everybody else's story. And then once I was like, okay, it's there. And then it was like, is this really mine? And I drove my family nuts. I'm like, is that really me? Is that my name? It was like, did it really happen? And then they're like, yes, it happened. And after about the 30th time, they're like, enough already. It's in print. We know this now. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm just so excited. And, it made me feel better because I got rid of that weight that was on my shoulders that I couldn't get through to them what I was experiencing, even though they were living with me. But once they read it, they got it better. And they were able to understand it. And that made it a lot easier.
Oh, I just love that. Was it really me? Is that really mine? I could just picture you. I could just picture you with your family and their reaction to you. Yes, yes. That is so great. What I want to do is just take a minute and share with our listeners and our viewers an excerpt from your stories. Marshawn, your story was titled, He Pressed the Reset Button, and you wrote, depression is a liar. It makes us believe we are not worthy of any blessings. It makes us think we are incapable of being loved, that we are ugly, insignificant, stupid, and fearful. Most atrocious is how it can make us believe God doesn't love us. For years, this was my life. And I just want to applaud you. When I read your story, and in particular, this particular excerpt, I felt like you were speaking my own experience. You were speaking a lot of the words that I also have already felt at some point in my life. Tell us what you're doing now. Tell us what you're doing in terms of your message, in terms of writing, and tell us where people can find you.
Well, in terms of writing, I am actually writing I'm writing stories. I'm writing more Christian inspirational stories, and I think it began with He Pressed the Reset Button, Kristen, and stories of trials to triumph, and with the process I went through with the compilation book, I think it began there because prior to that, I was just doing a lot of poetry and maybe other little short stories. But now it's more of trying to encourage other women. I really have a heart to work with women. So now I'm a social worker. I work with homeless persons who also suffer mental illness. So in this capacity, I provide a great deal of support and hope. But I really like to public speak. Whenever I'm asked to do something or go somewhere, I'm definitely willing to do that. I do facilitate a weekly women's issues group, and it's so wonderful because I'm able to listen to the ladies and foster sisterhood and growth and encouragement to the ladies and help them to realize their own breakthroughs in their lives. And I also just realized, Kristen, that just that depression and that darkness that I went through, that was my misery, but I've heard some people say, other women, great women, to say, your misery can also become your ministry. And that's just been so wonderful for me.
I love that. Your misery can become your ministry. There's a sound bite. That is fantastic. Well, thank you, Marshawn. I really appreciate that insight. And now let's hear an excerpt from Bonnie. Bonnie, your story was called My Word of the Year. And I loved this particular excerpt. I slept most of the next year as I sunk deeper and deeper into depression. My life seemed over. I couldn't, without help, wash my clothes, shop, or cut my food. I could forget about driving. I couldn't clean the house. I barely remembered to eat once a day. Most days I didn't. I put on a semi-brave face for my children. I couldn't even hug them. What kind of mother was I? I was useless. I was a burden. I should have stayed away from everyone. And for me, just those last couple lines, I mean, you did such a fantastic job describing your situation and your challenges, what you could and couldn't do. But I loved the last few lines. I was useless. I was a burden. I should have stayed away from everyone. I can't tell you how many times I hear that from people, from women in particular, who are really struggling through their trauma. Tell us more about what you're doing and how we can find you.
Well, unfortunately, what I had wanted to do was become a coach, and I'm still going to. It's just 6 months later than I wanted to. I'm hoping to get everything done and up and running and my website up come January or February. I'm about 98% there. I've been taking some coaching classes and writing more. I have 2 short inspirational pieces that are going to be coming out, and some books put out by Jody Chapman that deal with the spirit of grace and the and I can't remember the third book's name. Sorry about that. But I know it has to do with the spirit, and they're inspirational stories. Don't want to plug her book too much while we're talking about this book.
Yeah, that's okay.
But it's a lot like this one, except she took it a bigger step. There's going to be 365 stories in each book, one for each day, so that way there's something inspirational every day of the year.
Great.
And so I decided I was going to participate in that, and I'm going to have 2 stories, one in the next book, which comes out next May, and I'm not sure when the third book comes out. I wasn't able to participate in the first book, which comes out this week. And I'm still at home, still with my kids, except now we have 4 pets instead of 3. My youngest daughter talked me into another kitten.
Oh. Well, being a cat lover myself, I can appreciate the new kitten.
I was going to say no, and then she picked up the kitten and put her in my arms, and that little face looked at me, and I said, okay, she's coming home.
That's great. That's great. Bonnie, you know what I love the most about your message and what you're working on is this resounding theme of perseverance, and in spite of your struggles physically and emotionally, you're still pressing forward and you're holding on to your dreams, and I love that. I think that you've got such a great message of hope for other people in your same circumstance. I just love that you're working forward through all of that, so I just want to encourage you to keep up the good work there.
Thank you.
I want to invite our listeners to participate in future Women of Worth books. And if you feel that you've been inspired by hearing these great women today talk about the process of sharing their story and the blessing of doing so, I want to invite you to consider doing so for one of my upcoming books. Email me at Kristen@KristenClark.org. Send me an email. Type in the subject line, please send me Women of Worth Call for Submissions, WOW, and I'll add you to my distribution list. In addition to the one that I have coming out here in a couple weeks in time for the holiday season, I've got 3 more books scheduled for next year. And I want to make sure to open up the offer to anyone who's interested in participating. I will be your publisher and your editor, and I will work hand in hand with you in making that a reality for you and an opportunity for you. And I want to invite everyone to take an opportunity, if you haven't already done so, pick up a copy of Becoming Women of Worth, Stories of Trauma and Triumph. This is the book that are featuring our authors that we have here today, Bonnie and Marshawn. You can pick up a copy of this on Amazon.com. This will be a fantastic Christmas gift for the women in your life. I promise you, they will not be disappointed. It's a great stocking stuffer also, so don't delay. Pick up a copy of that. And before we move forward, what I want to do is ask you both, Bonnie and Marshawn, what word of encouragement would you have for someone listening in who's maybe never written their personal story? So we might have authors listening in who write fiction or poetry or have written, some other type of works but not their own personal story. Or we might have women listening who've never written before but need to navigate the details of their trauma in order to celebrate their triumph. What word, Marshawn, what words of encouragement, we'll start with you, do you have for those listening in?
I say just do it. Just write. Don't worry about grammar or spelling. All that can be taken care of later. Just get the experience and your feelings down on paper. It's an amazing and liberating experience. Your insight about the experience may be different or improve as you tell the story in your own words. It is powerful. It gives you more control over the experience, and I just highly recommend it. You will not be sorry, and it's such a blessing.
Thank you for that. Bonnie, same question. What words of encouragement do you have for those who are thinking of writing their story?
I'm going to go back to my list when you sent us the questions because I just wrote, which is always a great thing when you write, is the first thing is acknowledge what you're going through and accept that it happened to you. Because a lot of times we have a tendency to just say, nope, that wasn't me, or nope, that didn't happen, and we just kind of shove it away and we stay in that bad spot. So acknowledge that something happened to you and accept it, and then pray. Pray for inner strength that you can tell your story. Pray for help that you can get it out and that you don't let it bog you down and become more of a misery spot, but it becomes a step of hope and elation and understanding for not only yourself but for your family and loved ones around you, and understanding of somebody across the world. I'm here in South Carolina and Marshawn's over in California, and we both know what it's like to be depressed, to where we were horribly depressed. And it's not just, oh, I feel bad today. It was, I don't want to get up today. I don't want to do anything today. But we can understand each other because we've experienced that and we shared that. Pray at some point, if you want to publish it, a venue will appear for you. Just write your story. It will appear for you when it's time for you to tell it out loud to the world. Be grateful for what you have, because even though you don't feel like you have anything right now because you're coming from those places, you do. You have lots of gifts that God gave you, and He just threw something your way that says you're going to be better, you're going to be stronger, you're going to be more because you overcame this. And then my biggest one is don't be shocked by what memories or emotions come up while you're writing. Like I stated earlier, I was planning on writing about my dad and his passing right before my birthday, and instead I ended up writing about fibromyalgia. It was a completely different trauma that ended up coming out and being shared. And so, what needs to come out will come out when it's ready to come out, and you just pray for your inner strength and pray for God to guide you in the direction you need to go in order for you to heal yourself, and you will end up being so surprised by how your words help you heal someone else as well.
I just love that. And, I just want to encourage our listeners and our viewers, when you get a chance, listen to the replay of today's recording because there are some fantastic pearls of wisdom and sound bites that are just, oh my gosh, they just speak to me directly. They're encouraging, they're helpful, they're inspiring. Go back and listen to this over and over again. I know I certainly will. Ladies, thank you so much for sharing of yourself today. You've just been so sweet to let us take a sneak peek into the inside of your own lives, to share with us your story of hope and faith, to share with us, your encouragement for everyone to listen into. I love that. And for our listeners and our viewers, I just want to offer you this word of encouragement. May your cup runneth over with thoughts about yourself that are as precious as God's thoughts are about you. We are all each women of worth. And until next time, we'll go ahead and sign off. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Cheers.